Saint Theophan the Recluse, writer of many spiritual works in 19th century Russia, has this to say on the naturalistic theories of origins that had made their appearance in his time. The truth of God is simple. Can a proud mind study it? Such a mind would rather think up its own things, sensational things, although empty and as weak as a spider's web. To see that this is so, look at the current theories of the creation of the world. They are like a somnambulistic or drunken delirium. And yet how good they seem to those who invented them. How much energy and time are wasted on this, and all in vain. The deed was accomplished simply. He spake, and they came to be. He commanded, and they were created. Psalm 148, verse 5. No one can think up anything better than this solution. In another place, St. Theophan continues the same theme. What ought we to preach? The saint asked. We should cry to all, sons of the kingdom of heaven. Don't run from the kingdom into bondage and slavery, for they are in fact running. Some are captivated by freedom of mind. They say, we don't want the bonds of faith and the oppression of authority, even divine authority. We'll figure things out and make up our minds for ourselves. So they have made up their minds. They have built fables in which there is more childishness than in the mythology of the Greeks, and they magnify themselves. Others are enticed by the broad path of the passions. They say, we don't want to know positive commandments or the demands of conscience. This is all abstract. We need tangible naturalness. And they have gone after it. What has come of it? They have bowed down before dumb beasts. Has not the theory that man originated from animals arisen from this moral fall? This is where they have gone, and everyone runs from the Lord. Everyone runs. Elsewhere, St. Theophan wrote that Darwinism, together with other godless philosophies from the West, is deserving of formal condemnation by the Orthodox Church. These days, many nihilists of both sexes, naturalists, Darwinists, spiritists, and westernizers in general have multiplied among us. All right, you're thinking, would the Church have been silent? Would it not have proffered its voice? Would it not have condemned or anathematized them if there had been something new in their teaching? To be sure, a council would have done so without doubt, and all of them, with their teachings, would have been given over to anathema. To the current rite of orthodoxy, only the following item would have to be added. To Buchner, Feuerbach, Darwin, Renan, Kardec, and their followers, anathema. But there is no need, either for a special council or for any kind of addition. All of their false teachings were anathematized long ago. At the present time, not only in principal cities, but in all places and churches, the rite of orthodoxy ought to be brought in and celebrated, so that all the teachings contrary to the Word of God might be collected, and that it might be proclaimed to everyone what they must fear and from what teachings they must flee, and all might know. Many are seduced intellectually only through ignorance, and therefore a public condemnation of pernicious teachings would save them from destruction. If the action of an anathema is terrible to some, then let him avoid the teachings that lead to it. Let him who is afraid of it, for the sake of others, bring them back to a healthy teaching. If you who are not favorably disposed to this action are orthodox, then you are going against yourself. And if you have already lost sound teaching, then what business do you have concerning what is done in the church that supports it? After all, you've already separated yourself from the church and have your own convictions, your own way of looking at things. Well, live with them then. It's all the same whether or not your name and your teaching are uttered under the anathema. You are already under anathema if you philosophize against the church and persist in this philosophizing. St. Theophan predicted that, If naturalistic evolutionary notions of the world's origin continued to be propagated, the resulting loss of faith among the Russian people would help pave the way for the overthrow of the Orthodox Christian government of Russia. Less than 3 decades later, his prediction would be fulfilled. As he observed, people have suddenly had a thought and have started to write about preserving faith, but they don't want to block the source of unbelief. This source is the spread of the teaching that the world formed by itself, according to which there is no need for God and the soul does not exist. It's all atoms and chemistry, nothing more. This is being preached at university rostrums and in literature. He who breathes these fumes is inescapably stupefied and loses his sense and faith. Until these books are destroyed, until professors and literary men are forced not only not to hold to this theory, but even to demolish it, until then, faithlessness will grow, and with it, self-will and the destruction of the present government. That's the way the French Revolution went. Already in his time, St. Theophan saw that science was increasingly becoming a godless enterprise, which worked from the assumption that nature is all there is, and that therefore materialistic explanations can account for everything that exists. At the same time, he saw that the natural sciences were being falsely held up as the most reliable and authoritative source of knowledge. In various places, he spoke of this increasingly pervasive problem. There is not a single science which could be established solidly on its own principles. Something can be obtained from all the sciences, but this is not something that gives one the right to cite science as a decisive authority. It is not science itself that is the problem, but scientists who twist science however they want. Consequently, there are only the conjectures and inferences of scientists. In vain do people think highly about the world and its laws, about nature and its forces, as if there were something untouchable, indisputable, and inviolable in them. Under the appearance of science, they are devising for themselves an idol worship that is more destructive than the mythological idol worship of the ancient Greeks. No, brethren, it is not by the laws and forces of nature that the life of each one of us is upheld, but by the power of God acting within us. The Lord, upholding all things by the word of his power, Hebrews 1:3, bears each one of us by the same word of his power. Let us maintain this thought in our mind and imprint it in our heart. The all-active power of God bears us over the abyss of nothingness, and we live and move and have our being. Acts 17:28. If he takes away his spirit, if he removes his hand, we will disappear and will no longer be remembered among the living. But if the Lord holds us, then he touches us. He does not merely see us mentally. No, he touches us, as one hand touches another, or as the air touches one's body. How consoling and awesome! Elsewhere, St. Theophan reflected on what can happen to a person's outlook when he does not keep scientific knowledge in a position subordinate to his Christian faith. A pure spirit, nous, contemplates God and receives from him knowledge of mysteries. But even the spirit, combined with the body, after the diversity of the creations of the visible world has been revealed to it through the senses, having been enlightened by the same inward illumination from above, must contemplate in these creations all the mysteries of the knowledge of God and the mysteries of God's making and governing of the world, so that even when faced with this great amount of knowledge, it can remain unperturbed in the same single divine contemplation. But, having fallen, a person is captivated by the diversity of created things and even overwhelmed by impressions from them, which supplant within him the very thought of God. Studying created things, he goes no further than what he sees in them, their composition and interrelations, and, not receiving illumination from above, does not see in them the clear reflection of God and the divine mysteries. The world has become for him a tarnished mirror, in which nothing can be seen but the mirror itself. Hence, a great amount of knowledge suppresses within him the knowledge of the one thing. It turns him away from it, makes him cold toward it. Such is the price, and such is the fruit of science in a fallen state.